second graders, welcome back. We are going to make chocolate chip cookies, and this is a recipe that I'm sharing with you from my mom. This is a recipe that she made with me and my sisters when we were growing up, and it is for chocolate chip cookies from scratch. You can get chocolate chip cookie dough at the store already made and just pick it up and put it right onto a cookie sheet and throw it in the oven, and those are great when you're in a hurry, and those are awesome for the classroom. Those would have been ones that we could have easily made in the classroom. This is a little more time consuming because you're really using all the ingredients, yourself, but it's fun and we have the time, so hey, why not? So, and I know my mom would not mind me sharing this recipe. I think, to give credit where credit might be due, it might be from an old Betty Crocker cookbook from like the 70s. So that's what it looks like. There's really no credit on it, so just throwing that out there just in case anybody gets upset. So we've got our recipe like we did before, because we're going to use our vocabulary words here. This is a lesson after all. We've got our ingredients, and that's what we're going to be putting in to make the cookies. And then we have the directions, because we can't just throw it all in. There's steps to it because of the way that the ingredients interact with each other. So if you just throw it all in, it might not come out the same way. So it's a really smart idea, and I know we've said this a million times in class, but it's a really smart idea to read all the directions first to kind of get an understanding of what you're doing, and then kind of break it down and go through it step by step. Okay? All right. So I've done some of the measuring already because it can be a little time consuming and it's just not that exciting to watch. And I've divided up the ingredients into wet ingredients and dry ingredients because that's the directions. So, excuse me, you can see right down here it says to mix thoroughly the wet ingredients, eggs, vanilla, butter, things like that, and we'll talk about that when we put them in. And then we're gonna add in the dry ingredients like flour and soda and salt. Okay, so like I said, I've already measured some of these things already in here, and I would just like to say I've washed my hands just in case you're worried. I definitely washed my hands. So in the mixer, and I know you can't really see it, and that's fine because like I said, it's not that exciting and I don't want to mess with the iPad. But in my mixer here that we use for the pasta, this has the sugars in it. And we needed, when I say sugars, there's two different kinds. We've got white sugar, and that's in my, let me see if I can show you my canister here. I just kind of always have that around because we use it so much when we bake, and when I say we, I really mean me, but I'm still teaching, so here we are. We have white sugar and we have brown sugar, which is another reason why these cookies are amazing, because there's so much sugar in it. I'm just going to also tell you right now, this is not a healthy sugar cookie, chocolate chip cookie recipe, so just if you're looking for healthy, this is not the time. But tasty, yeah. So brown sugar is in there, white sugar is in there, and that needed a cup each. The recipe called for a cup each. So this is my measuring cup, and you can see on one side it is measuring by ounces and cups, and on this side is measuring by milliliters. So this is depending on what you're measuring. Like we talked about with measuring tools, you would not measure, for example, if I needed a cup of something, I wouldn't be using my measuring spoons. This is for something even smaller. So you have to match the size, the tool, to what you're actually using to measure. Does that make sense? So let me put my sugars down here. All right, so the sugar is in here. There's butter in here. We needed 2/3 of a cup of butter. So like I said, I measured that out and I went right up to 2/3 and I threw that in there. I also needed 2/3 of a cup of something called shortening. This is also, again, not terribly healthy, but it's another reason why the cookies are so good. Shortening is, I think it's kind of like a vegetable oil, if I'm not mistaken, and it's kind of like in stick form like a butter. So that is also already in here. In this bowl here, I have my dry ingredients, and the dry ingredients called for flour, which is in another one of my canisters that I'm not picking up because it's heavy right now. Excuse me, so I have flour in there already. We have baking soda in there. This is baking soda, and this is part of the science that makes the cookie expand and get bigger. This is not to be confused with other soda. And I'm sorry, but some things just don't change. So that is not the same kind of soda. That's one of those words that two different meanings, okay? So I have baking soda in here. Let me just check my recipe. I have salt. I needed a teaspoon of salt, and I just needed a teaspoon of that baking soda. And to give you an idea of how big a teaspoon is, it's this one right here. It's really not that big at all, just a little teaspoon. But it's important and you need to follow the directions. So these are all my dry ingredients. The only ingredients that I haven't put in the mixing bowl yet are my eggs and my vanilla. So you get to watch the egg part because that's just fun. So I'm gonna crack it into another cup here just because I really don't want to fish out eggshells if they happen to fall in. You don't have to do it that way, but I don't know. I think it kind of helps. All right. So we're going to add the eggs into the, well, I know the sugar isn't exactly wet, but we're putting it in with the wet stuff. So I'm putting in my 2 eggs into that mixing bowl. If you don't have a mixing bowl, you can just mix this by hand. I just use that, like I said, because it just helps. It's not as tiring on the hands. And then I need 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. And I'm actually going to use a different teaspoon for this just because it's not as messy. So here's another teaspoon, and they're usually labeled, and TSP is a little abbreviation for teaspoon. So we need 2 teaspoons of this vanilla. And then we're going to mix this all up. 1, 2. And this is kind of a fun thing to do on a rainy day. And it's a fun thing to make to share because it kind of makes a lot of cookies. So I'm going to be boxing them up and sharing them with people. So let's mix these wet ingredients together here. I'm going to turn this on. Let's see if it's not too loud. No, that's not too bad. And then once that's mixed, we're going to stir in these dry ingredients like the flour. And when we're really all done, we're going to mix in the chocolate chips. And when I was little, my mom would always let us take just a little bit of the cookie dough. I'm just knocking this stuff down to keep it mixing. She would always give us just a little bit with a chocolate chip on it. You don't want to do that too much because you're not supposed to eat raw egg. It's not good for you. But a teeny little bit is okay. So, like I said, once this all gets mixed, we'll add in the flour. And then, because these are chocolate chip cookies, I'm mixing in chocolate chips. You can use any kind you want. I'm a huge fan of Ghirardelli. I don't know, just once I got into them, I can't seem to say goodbye. But any chocolate chip will do. You could even use white chocolate chips. This recipe also has called for nuts. You can use chopped up walnuts, but we're not big fans, so we've typically left them out. But you can certainly, you know, kind of do what you want when you're the author of your own recipe there. And I also have my oven preheating behind me because that was also part of the directions. And I heated it to 375 degrees. So again, when we're talking about things that we're measuring, when you're measuring the temperature, you need to set it to what it tells you because that's going to determine how the cookie actually bakes. Like it's going to hopefully be a little crispy on the bottom because the sugar is going to melt. Really, 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 really good. And sugar melting, it kind of ends up being like caramel, which is just awesome. But like I said, this recipe has a ton of sugar in it. I do not recommend it all the time, but for a rainy day treat, it is not too bad. So I'm going to go ahead and add in the flour. There's salt, flour, baking soda. I think I have just double checking that I have everything. You don't want to forget anything. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add this in a little at a time. And when it's all done, we're going to add in those chocolate chips. And then I'm going to actually drop some of these off for my mom since she's nice enough to share the recipe. It seems that she ought to be able to at least have one of the cookies. I think that's fair. All right, so that's all of it. And then it's mixing together all on its own, which again is so great because we did this by hand with my mom when we were younger, and God bless, I don't know how she did it so often because it really kills your wrist after a while. All right, so I'm going to show you what this looks like in just a minute. Just mixing it up a little bit more. It makes so many cookies. All right. So, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and add the chips right now because that looks mixed enough. So, I'll show you when the chips are in. I'm putting in the whole bag because that's what we do. All right. And do you know, our classroom would smell so good if we were making cookies. Remember when we made those cinnamon buns and the whole hallway smelled like cinnamon? That was awesome. All right, let's give this a whirl. I'm not going to do it for too long because I don't want it to be too mixed. It's not pasta dough. It's way different. Remember that? All right. I'll take this off. And let me show you what it looks like. I'm going to scrape this off and throw that in the sink. And then I'll show you what our cookie dough looks like. So what I'm going to do is scoop it onto my baking sheet. And my baking sheet's kind of on the old side. So I have a couple of these. I got these off of Amazon. They're just, it's kind of like reusable parchment paper. You just throw it on your baking sheet and then you put your cookie dough right on it. And I have like a teeny little ice cream scoop. It might even be a cookie scoop, but yeah, it's kind of small for ice cream. But I use that so that they kind of stay the same size. And I'm just still saying it, my hands are clean. So I'm gonna scoop up just enough. I don't want to make it too big because then it might not cook all the way through on the inside, and the inside is like a little too gooey. So I'm going to scoop it out like a little round ball, like that. And I'm going to toss them on the cookie sheet here. And the directions say that they go in for about 8 to 10 minutes or until they're light brown. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to scoop the rest of these on here. And then when they're done, I will film like just a second little addition just to show you what they look like. Okay? All right, I will post the recipe because like I said, my mom does not mind. And I'll show you what they look like when they're done. Okay? All right, see you soon. Bye.